Good evening, and welcome to the first official episode of Drift Off, the show where it's my job to try and get you to sleep. To give you a little bit of a rundown on what we're about here, I'm using this space as a chance to read stories that I've wanted to read in the past and haven't had the chance, and stories that you folks have written as well. So, without further ado, let's crack on in and get this series started. Warriors Into the Wilds by the amazing Aaron Hunter. Keen to dive on in. There are a lot more books in this series than I was originally anticipating, so color me keen for that one. There's also a lot of names, a lot of characters here that I'm going to guess we're going to come to terms with. And if there are any fans in the series, please let me know if there's more to be added outside of what's here, but for now, let's dive in with the prologue. A half moon glowed on smooth granite boulders, turning them silver. The silence was broken only by the ripple of the water from the black river and the whisper of trees in the forest beyond. There was a stirring in the shadows, and from all around, lithe, dark shapes crept stealthily over the rocks. Unsheathed claws glinted in the moonlight, weary eyes flashed like amber. And then, as if on a silent signal, the creatures leaped at each other, and suddenly the rocks were alive with wrestling, screeching cats. At the center of the frenzy of fur and claws, a massive dark tabby pinned a bracken-colored Tom to the ground and drew up his head triumphantly. The tabby growled, "How dare you hunt in our territory? The Sunning Rocks belong to the Thunder Clan. After tonight, Tiger Claw, this will be just another River Clan hunting ground." The bracken-colored Tom spat back. A warning yowl came from the shore, shrill and anxious. "Look out, more River Clan warriors are coming." Tiger Claw turned to see sleek, wet bodies sliding out of the water below the rocks. The drenched River Clan warriors bounded silently up to the shore and hurled themselves into battle without even stopping to shake the water from their fur. The dark tabby glared down at Okart. "You may swim like otters, but you and your warriors do not belong in this forest." He drew back his lips and showed his teeth as the cat struggled beneath him. The desperate scream of a Thunder Clan she-cat rose above the clamour. A weary River Clan Tom had pinned the brown warrior flat on her belly. Now he lunged towards her neck, with paws still dripping from his swim across the river. Tiger Claw heard the cry and let go of Okart. With a mighty leap, he knocked the enemy warrior away from the she-cat. "Quick, Mousefur, run," he ordered, before turning to the River Clan Tom who had threatened her. Mousefur scrambled to her paws, wincing from a deep gash on her shoulder, and raced away. Behind her, Tiger Claw spat with rage as the River Clan Tom sliced upon his nose, blood blinding him for an instant. But he lunged forward regardless and sank his teeth into the hind leg of his enemy. The River Clan cat squealed and struggled free. "Tiger Claw." The yowl came from a warrior with a tail as red as fox fur. "This is useless. There are too many River Clan warriors." "No, Redtail. Thunder Clan will never be beaten." Tiger Claw prowled back, leaping to Redtail's side. "There are so many names." "This is our territory." Blood was welling around his broad neck muzzle, and he shook his head impatiently, scattering scarlet drops onto the rocks. "Thunder Clan will honor your courage, Tiger Claw, but we cannot afford to lose any more of our warriors," Redtail urged. "Blue Star would never expect our warriors to fight against these impossible odds. We will have another chance to avenge this defeat." He met Tiger Claw's amber-eyed gaze steadily, then reared away and sprang for a boulder at the edge of the trees. "Retreat, Thunder Clan, retreat," he yelled. At once his warriors squirmed and struggled away from their opponents, spitting and snarling. They backed towards Redtail. For a heartbeat, the River Clan cats looked confused. Was this battle so easily won? Then Okart yelled a jubilant cry. As soon as they heard him, the River Clan warriors raised their voices and joined their deputy in catwallering their victory. Redtail looked down at his warriors. With a flick of his tail, he gave the signal, and the Thunder Clan cats dived down the far side of the Sunning Rocks and then disappeared into the trees. Tiger Claw followed last. He hesitated at the edge of the forest and glanced back at the blood-stained battlefield. His face was grim, his eyes furious slits, and then he leaped after his clan into the silent forest. In a desert clearing, an old grey she-cat sat alone staring up at a clear night sky. All around her in the shadows she could hear breathing and stirring of sleeping cats. A small tortoiseshell she-cat emerged from the dark corner, her paw steps quick and soundless. The grey cat dipped her head in greeting. "How is Mousefur?" she meowed. "Her wounds are deep, Blue Star," answered the tortoiseshell, settling herself from the night-cool grass. "But she is young and strong. She will heal quickly. And the others? They will all recover too." Blue Star sighed. "We are lucky not to have lost any of our warriors this time. You're a gifted medicine cat, Spotted Leaf." She tilted her head again and studied the stars. "I am deeply troubled by tonight's defeat. ThunderClan has not been beaten in its own territory since I became leader," she murmured. "These are difficult times for our clan. The season of New Leaf is late, and there have been fewer kids. ThunderClan needs more warriors if it is to survive. But the year is only just beginning," Spotted Leaf pointed out calmly. "There will be more kits when Greenleaf comes." The grey cat twitched her broad shoulders. "Perhaps, but training our young to become warriors takes time. If ThunderClan is to defend its territory, it must have new warriors as soon as possible." "Are you asking StarClan for answers?" meowed Spotted Leaf gently, following Blue Star's gaze and staring up at the swath of stars glittering in the dark sky. "It is at times like these we need the words of the ancient warriors to help us. Has StarClan spoken to you?" Blue Star asked. "Not for some moons, Blue Star." Suddenly, a shooting star blazed over the treetops. Spotted Leaf's tail twitched and the fur along her spine bristled. Blue Star's ears pricked, but she remained silent as Spotted Leaf continued to gaze upward. After a few moments, Spotted Leaf lowered her head and turned to Blue Star. "It was a message from StarClan," she murmured. A distant look came into her eyes. "Fire alone can save our clan." "Fire?" Blue Star echoed. "But fire is feared by all the clans. How can it save us?" Spotted Leaf shook her head. "I do not know," she admitted. "But this is the message StarClan has chosen to share with me." The ThunderClan leader fixed her clear blue eyes on the medicine cat. "You have never been wrong before, Spotted Leaf," she meowed. "If StarClan has spoken, then it must be. Fire will save our clan." Okay, so I'm going to guess Spotted Leaf is a little bit of a prophet for this StarClan. Some entities or beings that they look up to or worship in some way, I guess. Chapter 1. It was very dark. Rusty could sense something was near. The young tomcat's eyes opened wide as he scanned the dense undergrowth. This place was unfamiliar. Strange scents drew him onward, deeper into the shadows. His stomach growled, reminding him of his hunger. He opened his jaws slightly to let in the warm smells of the forest reach the scent glands on the roof of his mouth. Musty odors of leaf mold mingled with the tempting aroma of a small, furry creature. Suddenly, a flash of grey raced past him. Rusty stopped still, listening. It was hiding in the leaves less than 2 tail lengths away. Rusty knew it was a mouse. He could feel the rapid pulsing of a tiny heart deep within his ear fur. He swallowed, stifling his rumbling stomach. Soon his hunger would be satisfied. Slowly, he lowered his body into position, crouching for the attack. He was downwind of the mouse. He knew it was not aware of him. With one final check on his prey's position, Rusty pushed back hard on his hunches and sprang, kicking up leaves on the forest floor as he rose. The mouse dived for cover, heading towards a hole in the ground. But Rusty was already on top of it. He scooped it into the air, looking at the helpless creature with thorn-sharp claws, flinging it into a high arc onto the leaf-covered ground. The mouse landed dazed but alive. It tried to run, but Rusty snatched it up again. He tossed the mouse once more, and this time a little further away. The mouse managed to scramble a few paces before Rusty caught up with it. Suddenly, a noise roared nearby. Rusty looked around, and as he did so, the mouse was able to pull away from his claws. When Rusty turned back, he saw it dart into the darkness among the tangled roots of the trees. Angry, Rusty gave up on the hunt. He spun around, his green eyes glaring, intent on searching for the noise that had cost him his kill. The sound rattled on, becoming more familiar. Rusty blinked open his eyes. The forest had disappeared. He was inside a hot and airless kitchen, curled up in his bed. Moonlight filtered through the window, casting shadows on the smooth, hard floor. The noise had been the rattle of the hard, dried pellets of food as they were tipped into his dish. Rusty had been dreaming. Lifting his head, he rested his chin on the side of the bed. His collar rubbed uncomfortably around his neck. In his dream, he had felt the fresh air ruffling soft fur where the collar usually pinched. Rusty rolled onto his back, savouring the dream for just a few more moments. But he could still smell the mouse. It was the third time since the full moon that he'd had that dream, and every time the mouse had escaped his grasp. He licked his lips. From his bed he could smell the bland odour of his food. His owners always refilled his dish before they went to bed. The dusty smell chased away the warm sense of his dream, but the hunger rumbled on in his stomach. So Rusty stretched the sleep out of his limbs and padded across the kitchen floor to his dinner. The food felt dry and tasteless on his tongue. Rusty reluctantly swallowed one more mouthful. Then he turned away from the food dish and pushed his way out through the cat flap, hoping the smell of the garden would bring back the feelings from his dream. Outside, the moon was bright. It was raining lightly. Rusty stalked down the tidy garden, following the starlit gravel path, feeling the stones cold and sharp beneath his claws. He made his dirt beneath a large bush with glossy green leaves and heavy purple flowers. Their sickly sweet scent cloyed the damp air around him as he curled his lip to drive the smell out of his nostrils. Afterward, Rusty settled down on top of one of the posts in the fence that marked the limits of his garden. It was a favourite spot of his, and he could see right into the neighbouring gardens as well as the dense green forest on the other side of the garden fence. The rain had stopped. Behind him, the close-cropped lawn was bathed in moonlight, but beyond his fence, the woods were full of shadows. Rusty stretched his head forward to take a sniff of the damp air. His skin was warm and dry under his thick coat, but he could feel the weight of the raindrops that sparkled on his ginger fur. He heard his owners giving him one last call from the back door. If he went to them now, they would greet him with gentle words and caresses and welcome him onto their bed where he would curl, purring warm in the crook of a bent knee. But this time Rusty ignored his owners' voices and turned his gaze back to the forest. Go on, Rusty. You know you want to, mate. The crisp smell of the woods had grown fresher after the rain. Suddenly the fur on his spine prickled. Was something moving out there? Was something watching him? Rusty stared ahead, but it was impossible to see or smell anything in the dark tree-scented air. He lifted his chin boldly, stood up and stretched, one paw gripping each corner of the fence post as he straightened his legs back and arched his back. He closed his eyes and breathed in the smell of the woods once more. It seemed to promise him something, tempting him onward into the whispering shadows. Tensing his muscles, he crouched for a moment. Then he leaped lightly down into the rough grass on the other side of the garden fence. And as he landed, a bell on his collar rang out through the still night air. Where are you off to, Rusty? Meowed a familiar voice behind him. Rusty looked up. A young black and white cat was balancing ungracefully on the fence. Hello, Smudge, Rusty replied. You're not going into the woods, are you? Smudge's amber eyes were huge. Just for a look, Rusty promised, shifting uncomfortably. You wouldn't get me in there. It's dangerous. Smudge wrinkled his black nose with distaste. Henry said he went into the woods once. The cat lifted its head and gestured with his nose over the rows of fences towards the garden where Henry lived. That fat old tabby never went into the woods, Rusty scoffed. He's hardly been beyond his own garden since his trip to the vet. All he wants to do is eat and sleep. No, really, he caught a robin in there, Smudge insisted. Well, if he did, then it was before the vet. Now he complains about birds because they disturb its dozing. Well, anyway, Smudge went on, ignoring the scorn in Rusty's mew. Henry told me there are all sorts of dangerous animals out there. Huge wildcats who eat live rabbits for breakfast and sharpen their claws on old bones. Only going to look around, Rusty meowed. I won't stay long. Well, don't say I didn't warn you, purred Smudge. The black and white cat turned and plunged off the fence back down into his garden. Rusty sat down in the coarse grass beyond the garden fence. He gave his shoulders a nervous lick and wondered how much of Smosh's gossip was true. Smoshes, smudges, goodness me. Suddenly, the movement of a tiny creature caught his eye. He watched it scuttle under some brambles. Instead, instinct made him drop into a low crouch. With one slow paw after another, he drew his body forward through the undergrowth. Ears pricked, nostrils flared, eyes unblinking, he moved towards the animal. He could see it clearly now, sitting among the barbed branches, nibbling on a large seed. Held between its paws, it was a mouse. His dreams coming true. Rusty rocked his hunches from side to side, preparing to leap. He held his breath in case his bell rang again. Excitement coursed through him, making his heart pound. This was even better than his dreams. Then, a sudden noise of cracking twigs and crunching leaves made him jump. His bell jangled treacherously, and the mouse darted away into the thickest tangle of the bramble bush. Rusty stood very still and looked around. He could still see the white tip of a red bushy tail poking through a clump of tall ferns up ahead. He smelled a strong, strange scent. Definitely a meat-eater, but neither cat nor dog. Distracted, Rusty forgot about the mouse, and he watched the red tail curiously. He wanted a better look. All of Rusty's senses strained ahead as he prowled forward. Then he detected another noise. It came from behind, but sounded somewhat muted and distant. He swiveled his ears backwards to hear it better. Perhaps, he wondered, but he kept his eyes fixed on the strange red fur up ahead and continued to creep onward. It was only when the faint rustling behind him became a loud, fast-approaching leaf crackle that Rusty realized he was in danger. The creature hit him like an explosion, and Rusty was thrown sideways into a clump of nettles. Twisting and yelling, he tried to throw off the attacker that had fastened himself to his back. It was gripping him with incredibly sharp claws. Rusty could feel spiked teeth prickling at his neck. He writhed and squirmed from whisker to tail, but he couldn't free himself. For a second, he felt helpless, and then he froze. Thinking fast, he flipped onto his back. He knew instinctively how dangerous it was to expose his soft belly, but it was his only chance. He was lucky. The voice seemed to work. He had a ha beneath him as the breath was knocked out of his attacker. Thrashing fiercely, Rusty managed to wriggle free. Without looking back, he sprinted towards his home. Behind him, a rush of paw steps told Rusty his attacker was giving chase. Even though the pain from the scratches stung beneath his fur, Rusty decided he would rather turn and fight than let himself be jumped on again. I'm noticing a couple of connections between the prophecy at the start with fire and Rusty being an orange cat, and the fact that he's drifting closer to this forest. I have an idea of where this might be going. Anyway. He skidded to a stop, spun around, and faced his pursuer. It was another kitten, with a thick coat of shaggy grey fur, strong legs, and a broad face. In a heartbeat, Rusty smelt that it was a tom, and sensed the power in the sturdy shoulders underneath the soft coat. Then the kitten crashed into Rusty at full pelt. Taken by surprise, Rusty's turnabout and fell back into a dazed heap. The impact knocked the breath out of Rusty, and he staggered. He quickly found his footing and arched his back, puffing out his orange fur, ready to spring onto the other kitten. But his attacker simply sat up and began to lick a forepaw, all signs of aggression gone. Rusty felt strangely disappointed. Every part of him was tense, ready for battle. "Hi there, kitty pet," meowed the grey tom cheerily. "You put up quite a fight for a tame kitty." Rusty remained on tiptoe for a second, wondering whether to attack anyway. Then he remembered the strength he had felt in the kitten's paws when he had been pinned to the ground. He dropped onto his pads, loosened his muscles, and let his spine unbend. "And I'll fight you again if I have to," he growled. "I'm Greypaw, by the way." The grey kitten went on, ignoring Rusty's threat. "I'm training to be a ThunderClan warrior." Rusty remained silent. He didn't understand what Grey Watson was mewing about, but he sensed the threat had passed. He had hid the confusion by leaning down to lick his ruffled chest. "What's a kitty pet like you doing out here in the woods? Don't you know it's dangerous?" asked Greypaw. "If you're the most dangerous thing that the woods has to offer, then I think I can handle it," Rusty bluffed. Greypaw looked at him for a moment, narrowing his big yellow eyes. "Oh, I'm far from the most dangerous. If I were even half a warrior, I'd have given an intruder like you some real wounds to think about." Rusty felt a thrill of fear at these ominous words. What did the cat mean by intruder? "Anyway," meowed Greypaw, using his sharp teeth to poke a clump of grass from between his claws. "I didn't think it was worth hurting you. You're obviously not from one of the other clans." "Other clans?" Rusty echoed, confused. Greypaw let out an impatient hiss. "You must have heard of the 4 warrior clans that hunt around here. I belong to ThunderClan. The other clans are always trying to steal prey from our territory, especially ShadowClan. They're so fierce that they would have ripped you to shreds, no questions asked." Greypaw paused, to spit angrily and continued. "They come to take prey that is rightfully ours. It's the job of the ThunderClan warriors to keep them out of our territory. When I finish my training, I'll be so dangerous that I'll have the other clans shaking in their flea-bitten skins." Rusty narrowed his eyes. This must be one of the wildcats Smudge had warned him about. Living rough in the woods, hunting and fighting each other for every last scrap of food, yet Rusty didn't feel scared. In fact, it was hard not to admire this comforting kitten. "So you're not a warrior yet?" he asked. "Why? Did you think I was?" Greypaw purred proudly. He then shook his wide, furry head. "I won't be a real warrior for ages. I have to go through the training first. Kits have to be 6 moons old before they can even begin training. Tonight is my first night out as an apprentice. Why don't you find yourself an owner with a nice cozy house instead? Your life would be much easier," Rusty meowed. "There are plenty of housefolk who'd take in a kitten like you. All you have to do is sit where they can see you and look hungry for a couple of days. And then food and pellets that look like rabbit droppings and soft slop," Greypaw interrupted. "No way. I can't think of anything worse than being a kitty pet. They're nothing but 2-leg toys." 2-leg, I'm gonna guess, is human. Eating stuff that doesn't look like food, making dirt in a box of gravel, sticking their noses outside only when the 2 legs allow them. Yeah, I'm gonna guess so. That's no life. Out here it's wild and it's free. We come and we go as we please." He finished his speech, and with a proud spit, meowed mischievously. "Until you've tasted a fresh killed mouse, you haven't lived. Have you even tasted mouse?" "No," Rusty admitted a little defensively. "Not yet." "I guess you'll never understand," Greypaw sighed. "You weren't even born wild. It makes a big difference. You need to be born with warrior blood in your veins or to feel the wind in your whiskers. Kittens born into 2-leg nests could never feel the same way." Rusty remembered the way he'd felt in his dream. "That's not true," he mewed. Greypaw did not reply. He suddenly stiffened mid-lick, one paw still raised, and sniffed the air. "I smell cats from my clan," he hissed. "You should go. They won't be pleased to find you hunting in our territory." Rusty looked around, wondering how Greypaw knew any cat was approaching. They couldn't smell anything different on the leaf-scented breeze, but his fur stood on end with the note of urgency in Greypaw's voice. "Quick," hissed Greypaw again. "Run!" Rusty prepared to spring into the bushes, not knowing which way was safe to jump. It was too late. A voice mewed behind him, firm and menacing. Rusty turned to see a large grey she-cat strolling majestically out from the undergrowth. She was magnificent. White hairs streaked her muzzle, and an ugly scar parted the fur across her shoulders, but her smooth grey coat shone like silver in the moonlight. "Blue Star." Beside Rusty, Greypaw crouched down and narrowed his eyes. He crouched even lower when a second cat, a handsome golden tabby, followed the grey cat into the clearing. "You shouldn't go so near that two-legged place, Greypaw," growled the golden tabby angrily, narrowing his eyes. "I know, Lionheart. I'm sorry." Greypaw looked down at his paws. Rusty copied Greypaw and crouched low to the forest floor, his ears twitching nervously. These cats had an air of strength that he had never seen in any of his garden friends. Maybe this is what Smudge had warned him about. "Who is this?" asked the she-cat. Rusty flinched as she turned her gaze on him. Her piercing blue eyes made her feel even more vulnerable. "He's no threat," mewed Greypaw. "He's not another clan warrior, just a two-legged pet from beyond our territories. Just a two-legged pet." The words inflamed Rusty. "This is Bluestar. She's the leader of my clan," Greypaw hissed to Rusty under his breath. "And Lionheart, he's my mentor." "Which means he's training to be a warrior." "Thank you for the introduction, Greypaw," meowed Lionheart coolly. Bluestar was still staring at Rusty. "You fight well for a two-legged pet," she meowed. Rusty and Greypaw exchanged confused glances. How could she know? "We have been watching you both," Bluestar went on, as if she had read their thoughts. "We wondered how you would deal with an intruder, Greypaw. You attacked him bravely." Greypaw looked pleased at Bluestar's praise. "Sit up now, both of you." Bluestar looked at Rusty. "You too, kitty pet." He sat up immediately and held Bluestar's gaze evenly as she addressed him. "You reacted well to the attack, kitty pet. Greypaw is stronger than you, but you used your wits to defend yourself, and you turned to face him when he chased you. I've not seen a kitty pet do that before." Rusty managed to nod his thanks, taken aback by such unexpected praise. The next words surprised him even more though. "I've been wondering how you would perform out here, beyond the two-legged place. We patrol this border frequently, so I've often seen you sitting at your boundary, staring out into the forest. And now at last you've dared to place your paws here." Bluestar stared at Rusty thoughtfully. "You do seem to have a natural hunting ability. Sharp eyes. You would have caught that mouse if you had not hesitated so long." "Really?" Rusty stammered. Lionheart spoke now. His deep meow was respectful but insistent. "Bluestar, this is a kitty pet. He should not be hunting in ThunderClan territory. Send him home to his two legs." Rusty prickled at Lionheart's dismissive words. "Send me home?" he mewed impatiently. Bluestar's words had made him grow with pride. She had noticed him. She'd been impressed by him. "But I've only come here to hunt for a mouse or two. I'm sure there's enough to go around." Bluestar had turned her head to acknowledge Lionheart's words, but now her gaze snapped back to Rusty. Her blue eyes were blazing with anger. "There's never enough to go around," she spat. "If you didn't live such a soft, overfed life, you would know that." Rusty was confused by Bluestar's sudden rage, but one glance at the horrified look on Greypaw's face was enough to tell him that he had spoken too freely. Lionheart stepped to his leader's side. Both warriors loomed over him now. Rusty looked into Bluestar's threatening stare, and his pride dissolved. These were not cozy fireside cats he was dealing with. They were mean, hungry cats who were probably going to finish what Greypaw had started. And that is chapter 2, and where I call reading for the night. I'll be back on tomorrow to continue where we left off. Thank you very much for coming along with this journey with me. Early thoughts and impressions, I'm actually really liking it. For a kid's book, it's actually got some well-written action straight at the start. I am enjoying the little cat mannerisms, like two legs. That's very, very cute, but keen to see what happens. Very, very keen to see what happens. Anyway, if you do want to follow along to the series, make sure to chuck me a subscription, like the video if that's something you want to do, and have an amazing night. Love you heaps, and we'll see you in the next one.